I'm 34 years old. Name's Jordan. I live just outside of Denver, work remotely as a UX consultant, and honestly, I've built a pretty peaceful life for myself. I've got a little girl named Lily. She just turned 7. Brightest thing in my world. Her laugh has this way of cutting through every ounce of stress I carry. I split from her mother years ago. No drama there, just two people who grew in different directions. Since then, it's been me and Lily against the world. And we're doing just fine. My family, though, that's where things get complicated. You'd think with all the blood is thicker than water lectures I've heard growing up, things would have been tighter. But nope. My parents have always had this gravitational pull around my younger sister, Alyssa, the golden child, the miracle baby, the one who, no matter what mess she creates, gets gently handed a clean slate. Alyssa is 29. She's what my dad calls a go-getter. But if you ask me, she's more of a get other people to go for her type. Entitled in that way where she genuinely believes the universe is rigged to revolve around her. I can't count how many times she's maxed out credit cards, bounced between jobs, relationships, even apartments, only to land softly on the couch at our parents' place, again and again. They always welcome her back like she's some war hero. Meanwhile, if I miss a call or forget a birthday card, it's a lecture about being cold and distant. I've learned to manage it, keep my distance emotionally, do the family dinners, smile when needed, nod through their stories. But lately, it's been harder. They've started dragging Lily into it. Last month, we were at Mom's for her birthday. Just a casual get-together. I brought a gift. Lily made a card with a paper flower taped on it, and we were both in good spirits. Alyssa arrived late, of course, carrying a massive bouquet she clearly didn't buy herself, still had the price tag tucked under the wrapping paper. She made a whole scene about it, complete with fake surprise that Mom actually liked it. Then she turned to me and asked in front of everyone, "So, are you still doing that computer stuff? Or are you finally working a real job?" I chuckled, more to keep things light than because it was funny. "Still doing the computer stuff," I said. "Pays the bills." "What bills?" she snorted. "You live in a shoebox." Now, my place isn't huge, but it's a cozy 2-bedroom condo in a quiet area with a great school down the road. Lily has her own room, and I've done my best to make it a real home. But Alyssa's words stung. Not because they were true, but because she said them in front of Lily, loud enough for her to hear, and with that smug, sideways smile she always wears when she's poking me. My mom giggled, but in that nervous way she does when Alyssa's being a bit much. My dad just cleared his throat and started fiddling with the TV remote like he always does when conflict might rear its head. I didn't engage. I smiled, took Lily's hand, and asked if she wanted to help me bring in dessert from the car. She nodded, and as we stepped outside, she asked, "Daddy, what's a shoebox house?" I knelt beside her, brushing her hair behind her ear. "It's just something silly Aunt Alyssa said," I told her. "She doesn't know anything about our place. You like our home, right?" She grinned and nodded. "I love our home." That should have been it. I was ready to let it roll off my back like I always do. But then the wedding invitation arrived. Well, invitation is a strong word. It was more like an announcement. Alyssa had gotten engaged to this guy named Blake, who I'd met exactly once. Seemed decent, if not slightly robotic. The kind of man who could sit through a house fire and still look bored. The message I got wasn't even from her. It came from my mother. "We're so thrilled. Save the date. Alyssa's wedding is going to be at Rockvale Gardens next spring. Black tie, child-free, for obvious reasons. Can't wait to see you there." I reread that message 3 times. Child-free, for obvious reasons, hit me like a slap. Obvious reasons? What reasons? Lily had never misbehaved at any family event. She was quiet, kind, polite to a fault. This wasn't some wild toddler prone to screaming or knocking over wine glasses. This was a 7-year-old who brought coloring books to keep herself busy at adult dinners and said, "Thank you," even when she didn't get a slice of cake. So I called my mom. "Hey," I said as calmly as I could. "Just saw your message about the wedding. Can you explain that obvious reasons part?" She hesitated for half a beat. "Oh, honey, don't take it personally. You know how Alyssa is. She wants everything to be perfect. No distractions." "Lily's not a distraction." "No, of course not. But, well, she does get shy sometimes, and Alyssa's worried she'll look out of place in the photos. It's just one day, Jordan." I didn't say anything for a second. My brain was doing somersaults trying to figure out how to respond in a way that didn't end in a shouting match. "She's 7, I said finally. She was looking forward to this. "You realize how cruel that is, right? Don't be dramatic." I almost laughed. "Right? Because child-free, for obvious reasons, isn't dramatic at all. We can find a sitter for her, can't we? It'll be good for you to have a night out." That line, that condescending, passive-aggressive they always used. The one that assumed I needed help navigating my own life. That assumed I was the difficult one, the sensitive one, the one who needed to learn to forgive and let go. I ended the call politely. Then I texted Alyssa directly. "Just to be clear, Lily isn't invited to your wedding?" She replied instantly. "No offense, but I don't want a sulking kid in my photos. Sorry. Nothing personal. Nothing personal." I stared at the screen for a while. Then I typed back, "Good luck with your perfect wedding." I was ready to leave it there. Really, I was. But then, the real kicker came 2 days later when I got another message, this time from Alyssa herself. "Hey," it began. Never a good sign. "So random, but I need a huge favor. Blake's parents are dragging their feet on the venue deposit, and it's due next week. We're $80,000 short, but it's all refundable after the wedding once the family gifts come through. Can you co-sign a small loan so we don't lose the booking? You know I'd do it for you." I blinked. This woman had just uninvited my daughter, her niece, from her wedding because she might ruin the photos. And now she wanted me to co-sign a loan for $80,000? I didn't reply right away. I let it sit. Then I showed the message to Lily. Not to guilt her, but because I needed to remind myself what I was protecting. She read it, frowned, and said, "That's a lot of money." "Yup," I said. "She doesn't like me." I paused. "It's not that, sweetheart. She's just confused. Sometimes people make bad choices because they're too focused on themselves." Lily nodded slowly, then said something I'll never forget. "Then don't help her. Let her learn." That's when the idea first started to form. A quiet ember of something I hadn't felt in a long time, righteous anger. But not the explosive kind. The kind that simmers, that waits, that watches, that plans. And that ember started to grow when I saw Alyssa's next Instagram post. A photo of her, arms wrapped around Blake, with the caption, "Venue locked in. Countdown begins." Couldn't have done it without family. Family. That word. I stared at the screen for a long time. And then I smiled. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't answer Alyssa's message. Not right away. I just let it sit there, like a slow leak from a broken pipe. Something she'd eventually trip over. She was the kind of person who couldn't handle silence, especially not from someone she expected loyalty from. 2 days later, she followed up with a cheery, "Hey, just checking in. Did you see my message?" And when I didn't bite, she sent another one that night, a little sharper. "You said family was important to you." This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. That's the thing about Alyssa. She doesn't ask for help. She demands it in pastel fonts and smiley faces, then wraps it in guilt like tinfoil over leftovers. My silence was the closest thing to a no she'd heard from me in years, and it rattled her. Still, I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because that same week, my parents called me. First my mom, then my dad. "She's really counting on you," my mom said, voice tight with a mix of disappointment and pleading. "It's just paperwork. You won't even be paying anything." "She's your sister," my dad added during his call. "She's always looked up to you." I nearly laughed at that one. Looked up to me? Alyssa wouldn't climb a ladder if I were at the top waving a check. But what really stuck with me was what my mom said right before hanging up. "She's had a harder life than you, Jordan. You know that." Harder. That word echoed in my head for days. This woman who had everything handed to her, who failed upward in ways I couldn't even dream of, had it harder? I remembered all the times I babysat her while our parents worked overtime or went to their church groups or just didn't feel like dealing with her tantrums. I remembered staying home during college breaks while my friends traveled because Alyssa needed a big brother around to keep her steady. I remembered paying off her first car's repair bill because she called me crying in the middle of the night about being stranded, even though she'd crashed it because she was texting and driving. She didn't pay me back, never even offered. But I remembered most clearly the day I brought Lily home from the hospital. It had been a rough birth. Complications. Emergency C-section. I hadn't slept in 40 hours, but I drove straight from the hospital to my parents' place to introduce them to their granddaughter. Alyssa was already there. She barely looked up from her phone. When I handed Lily to Mom, Alyssa actually sighed and said, "Ugh, babies smell weird." That was her welcome. She held Lily once, awkwardly, and then set her down like she was made of cardboard. From that moment on, she treated my daughter like a side character in her life. Like Lily was just some accessory I insisted on dragging around to every family function. So when my parents said she had it harder, I snapped. I work full-time, solo parent a child, and manage my life without bailing anyone out for $80,000, I told my dad. She's almost 30 and still living like a TikTok trend. I'm not helping her. End of story. He went quiet. Then, with that low, disappointed sigh only dads can pull off, he muttered, "You've changed." "Yeah," I said. "I grew up." Click. I thought that would be it for a while. That maybe they'd back off and let the whole thing blow over. But no. Instead, they invited me and Lily over for dinner the following weekend. "We miss you," Mom said. "It's been a while since the family's all been together." Against my better judgment, I said yes. Maybe out of nostalgia. Maybe because Lily was excited to see her cousins. Or maybe because some small, stupid part of me still wanted to believe that we could all just sit down and be normal. We arrived right on time. Lily was in her favorite dress, the blue one with stars. She'd even braided her own hair and brought a card she made for Alyssa that said, "Congrats on your wedding," in crayon. As soon as we walked in, though, I knew something was off. The living room was filled with pink balloons and rose gold banners. A long table was set with champagne flutes and name cards. Alyssa stood near the fireplace in a white dress that was clearly meant to be bridal adjacent. Blake hovered beside her like a shadow. And in the corner, there was a chalkboard sign that read, "Bridal Loan Brunch, sponsored by family." I froze. Lily tugged on my sleeve. "Daddy, what's a bridal loan?" Alyssa saw us then and walked over, arms open. "You made it," she squealed, kissing the air near my cheek. "So glad you're here, big bro." I blinked. "What is this?" "Oh, just a little gathering. Everyone's pitching in for the big day." She pointed to a glitter-covered box on the coffee table labeled "Down Payment Donations." "You're joking," I said. She wasn't. One by one, relatives began dropping checks into the box like it was a church offering plate. My parents beamed like proud auctioneers. Aunt Carol even handed Alyssa a card and winked. "Put me down for $5,000, she said. "We're so excited for you." I turned to leave. "Wait." Alyssa called after me. "Jordan, don't be rude. We put you and Lily on the list for a contribution." I stopped. "Excuse me." She held up a clipboard. "Yeah, Dad said you'd be good for 10. I stared at her. $10. 1,000, she said like duh. That was it. That was the moment something snapped inside me. Not when they uninvited my daughter. Not when they begged for money. But when they expected me to give it, like it was some kind of tax for daring to have a spine. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I knelt beside Lily, took the card she'd made, and gently placed it on the gift table. "Let's go, sweetheart." "But we just got here." "I know. We're leaving." I could feel my parents' eyes on me. My mother hissed, "Jordan, don't you dare embarrass her." I looked over my shoulder. "You've done enough of that already." We walked out. I thought it would end there. I honestly did. I thought maybe that would be the final fracture, that we could all retreat into silence and live our separate lives. But then the next morning, I woke up to a message from my mom. It was a group text. She had sent it to me, Blake, Alyssa, my dad, and a few other family members. "Jordan has decided not to support Alyssa's wedding. We're heartbroken, but respecting his choice. Unfortunately, that means he and Lily won't be attending. Family is about showing up, even when it's hard." No mention of them uninviting Lily first. No mention of the money. Just a public, passive-aggressive crucifixion. I didn't reply, but then Lily came into my office that afternoon holding her iPad. "Daddy," she said, "why did Aunt Alyssa post a picture of me with a sad face on it?" I took the tablet. There it was. A photo of Lily from that brunch, taken when we first arrived, before she realized what was happening. The caption? "When you realize your dad doesn't believe in happy endings." I stared at it for a long time. My hands started shaking. Not from rage, but from that quiet, cold fury that sits in your stomach like a stone. That photo had been taken without our knowledge. And now my daughter was being used as emotional leverage in some warped family narrative. That was the moment I stopped playing defense. Because I'd had enough. I was done being the bigger person. Done turning the other cheek. Done swallowing disappointment like medicine. I opened my laptop. And I started planning. Not for payback. Not out of pettiness. but for justice. And when I was done, no one, no one, was going to forget what happened next. I didn't speak to my family for weeks after the brunch ambush. Not a text, not a call, not a single breadcrumb of acknowledgement. It was like hitting mute on a toxic group chat that had been running for years, and for the first time in a long while, the silence felt like oxygen. But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. Truth is, it wrecked me. I'd been through breakups, job losses, sleepless nights with a newborn in my arms, and a divorce that left me financially gutted. But there's something uniquely brutal about family betrayal, especially when your own child becomes collateral damage in their little power games. It seeps under your skin. It makes you question everything you ever tolerated for the sake of keeping the peace. I spent the first few days in a fog. I still went through the motions, made Lily's lunches, did client calls, answered emails, but something in me felt unplugged. Hollow, like I was going through life with a dead battery and a fake smile. Lily noticed, of course. Kids always do. Daddy, she asked one morning as we brushed our teeth side by side, are you mad at me? I froze. What? No, never. Why would you think that? She shrugged, spitting toothpaste into the sink. Because you're quiet, and you keep looking at your phone like it's going to say something mean. That hit me harder than anything Alyssa ever said. I knelt down to her level, toothbrush still in hand, and said, I'm not mad at you, sweetheart. I'm just tired. Grown-ups get tired sometimes. But I promise you, you didn't do anything wrong. She gave a small nod, but I could see the worry hadn't left her eyes. And that's when I realized something I should have known all along. If I didn't start healing, she'd carry the weight of it with me. Even if I never said a word. Even if I kept pretending I was okay. So I made a decision. Not about revenge. Not yet. I decided to rebuild. Quietly. On my terms. Away from their noise. The first thing I did was unfollow almost every single relative on social media. Blocked a few. Muted the rest. Alyssa's posts about wedding prep with my besties and family isn't blood, it's who shows up for you, weren't helping my mental health. Every caption was a passive-aggressive landmine, and I was done tiptoeing around them. Next, I took 2 days off work. Just me and Lily. We went to the mountains. I rented a tiny cabin outside Estes Park. Nothing fancy, just one of those rustic spots with creaky floors and no cell service. We packed board games, marshmallows, coloring books, and a beat-up telescope I hadn't touched since college. For 48 hours, we hiked, built fires, made s'mores, and talked about everything that wasn't the wedding. I watched Lily chase chipmunks through the trees, her giggles echoing through the pine-scented air, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something thaw in my chest. One night, she looked up at the stars and asked, do people still love you even if you don't give them money? I blinked back the sting in my eyes. Real people do, I told her. The right ones. She nodded and pointed at a cluster of stars. That one's you. The bright one. I hugged her so tight she squeaked. When we got back to the city, I dove into work. Not just because of the distraction, though it helped, but because I realized how much I'd let my boundaries dissolve trying to please people who only noticed me when they wanted something. I had taken on clients out of obligation, undercharged out of guilt, over-delivered just to prove I was good enough. No more. I restructured my pricing. Fired 2 clients who were draining the life out of me. Put up a proper booking system instead of letting people just email whenever. And guess what? Business got better. Because when you respect your own time, people start respecting it too. By the end of the month, I landed a contract with a tech startup looking to redesign their onboarding experience. It was the biggest project I'd ever taken on. 6 months, full creative control, and more than enough money to finally start saving for a real house. A house with a yard. Somewhere Lily could plant the lemon tree she'd been talking about since last summer. I celebrated with a pancake night. Just the 2 of us, in pajamas, syrup everywhere. This is better than the wedding, Lily said between bites. Yeah. I asked. Why? She tilted her head, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Because we're happy. And just like that, I realized I didn't miss them. Not the comments. Not the guilt. Not the fake hugs and forced smiles. My life, our life, wasn't missing anything. It had been cluttered with things we never needed. And now that the noise was gone, I could hear myself think again. But that peace was short-lived. Because 2 weeks later, Alyssa texted me. It was a photo, a picture of a check, made out to her, from our parents. $80,000. The caption? Guess family came through after all. I didn't reply, but I felt the fury boil back up like it had never left. They bailed her out. Again. Not because they had it, because I knew they didn't. My dad's pension wasn't that strong, and my mom had been talking about downsizing for over a year. They dipped into their retirement, or remortgaged the house, or took out some kind of desperate loan, all to fund a wedding that excluded their granddaughter, and then flaunted it like it was some kind of moral victory. That night, I stayed up late staring at the ceiling, not in anger, not in sadness, but in clarity. Because while they were busy mortgaging their futures for an Instagrammable wedding, I'd been investing in something far more stable. Myself. I started networking. Not with my family, real networking. I attended a virtual UX conference, joined a Discord group of design consultants, even started mentoring a junior designer who reminded me of a younger version of myself, eager, curious, and perpetually underpaid. Sharing what I'd learned gave me something my family never had. A sense of legacy that wasn't tied to blood or guilt. I also began therapy. Best decision I ever made. My therapist helped me unpack the guilt I didn't even know I was carrying. Helped me understand that setting boundaries wasn't cruelty. It was care. Not just for me, but for Lily. Every time I let someone walk over me, I was teaching her that love meant swallowing pain. I wasn't going to pass that lesson down another generation. In our fourth session, my therapist asked me what I needed most from my family. I thought for a long time. Then I said, accountability. She nodded. Do you think they're capable of giving that? I laughed. Absolutely not. Then what do you do with that truth? That question haunted me. Because once you know someone will never change, you only have two choices. Accept it or act accordingly. So I started acting. Quietly. Strategically. I looked into the wedding venue's policies. Found out who the event coordinator was. Did a little research into what vendors they were using. Not for revenge. Not yet. Just information. Because sometimes, power doesn't come from speaking louder. It comes from knowing exactly where to press. And the more I learned, the more I realized just how fragile their perfect little wedding really was. How one missed payment, one reversed deposit, one phone call could shatter the illusion. But I wasn't there yet. Not quite. Because before I did anything, before I made any move, I wanted to be sure that when I struck, it wouldn't be out of bitterness. It would be out of balance. So I waited, watched, listened, and then one night, as Lily and I decorated her birthday cake with way too many sprinkles, she said, "Do you think Aunt Alyssa will send me a card?" I paused. "I don't think so, honey." She frowned. "That's okay. I didn't send her one either." We both laughed. And in that laugh, I felt something shift. The fall was over. I was rising now. Stronger, sharper, smarter. And they had no idea what was coming. The change wasn't loud. It didn't come with trumpets or fiery declarations or cinematic montages. It came slowly, like a sunrise slipping through drawn curtains. Quiet, but inevitable. By the time spring bloomed, I was a different man. Not just stronger, I was focused, centered, free of the weight that had clung to me since childhood. I had clarity. And clarity, I've learned, is the deadliest weapon you can wield when you've spent a lifetime being disarmed by guilt. And while my family prepped for the event of the decade, as Alyssa called it, I was prepping too. For something else entirely. It began innocently enough. A Google search, then a few phone calls, then a visit to Rockvale Gardens, the wedding venue Alyssa wouldn't stop bragging about. The place that had apparently required an $80,000 non-refundable deposit. Exclusive, she called it. Elite. What she didn't mention was that it was still on a payment plan. I learned this from Elaine. Elaine, the venue coordinator, was a professional in every sense. Poised, polite, crisp. I showed up under the pretense of researching wedding venues for a friend. I even brought a notebook with random scribbles and a fake guest list. She walked me through the ballroom, the rose garden, the carriage house, the outdoor terrace that overlooked the lake. "This one's booked up solid through the summer," she said proudly. "Though, the Donnelly Gray wedding in mid-June is a little shaky. They've only put down 50% so far. We've extended the payment deadline twice." I tilted my head. What happens if they don't finish paying? "Oh, we cancel the event and open the date back up. No exceptions." I smiled. Good to know. Elaine offered me a brochure and her card. I thanked her, promised to circle back, and walked out feeling like I'd just unlocked a secret door in a game I'd been playing blindfolded. But that was just the beginning. Back home, I started building a file. Not just on the venue, but the entire wedding operation. See, when someone is as image-obsessed as Alyssa, they leave a trail. Instagram posts, vendor tags, public planning boards, wedding registries, hashtags, TikToks, Pinterest vision boards. She turned her wedding into a personal brand launch, and every step of the process was broadcast online. And she tagged everyone: the florist, the caterer, the dress boutique, the photographer, the videographer, the wedding planner, which meant all I had to do was follow the links. And I did. I built a spreadsheet. Vendor names, payment deadlines, refund policies, contact info, notes on each one. A couple of them, like the cake designer and lighting crew, had strict cancellation fees. Others offered first come, first served slots that could easily be swiped if a previous client didn't finalize contracts in time. That gave me an idea. I created a fake Gmail account, lauren.fields.events@gmail.com. Then I made a wedding inquiry website. Simple, clean, professional. Lauren Fields Events, elegant celebrations with a sharp eye for detail. I bought a domain for $12. Linked a calendar. Created an auto-reply email. It didn't need to be real for long, just real enough to look like competition. Then I started emailing her vendors. Nothing aggressive, just curiosity. Hi, I'm reaching out on behalf of a high-profile client seeking a venue for a June wedding. Do you happen to have availability around the 15th? We're finalizing a few options this week. Please let me know. Several replied within hours. One florist wrote, "We actually have an opening on the 14th if another client doesn't submit their final payment by next Friday." Check. Another said, "The Donnelly Gray wedding has a soft hold right now. If that falls through, we'll reach out." Double check. Each message gave me more than I needed. Alyssa had pieced together a house of glass and assumed everyone would just admire how it sparkled. But all I saw were pressure points. It wasn't sabotage yet. It was mapping. And the more I mapped, the clearer my strategy became. I didn't want to ruin her wedding. I wanted her to ruin it herself. But to do that, I needed more than vendor knowledge. I needed timing. So I waited. I bided my time while Lily turned 8 and built a solar system model for science class. While I signed the final contract for the startup gig and watched my savings account finally grow fat. While my therapist gently reminded me to pursue accountability, not obsession. But I wasn't obsessed. I was patient. And patience, like I said before, is its own kind of power. Then, the opening arrived. Mid-April, I got a call from my cousin Matt. Matt's not close to the rest of the family. He's the black sheep, like me, except with tattoos and a motorcycle and a slightly higher tolerance for tequila. But we'd always had a quiet bond. He knew about the brunch, knew about the photo of Lily, and he hated what they did to us. So when he called and said, "Dude, you're gonna want to hear this," I listened. Alyssa was bragging at Grandma's house. Said she got the photographer to give her a discount because she promised him massive exposure. Then she laughed and said she hasn't signed the final contract yet and might just ghost him and go with someone cheaper. I paused. She said that in front of Grandma? Yeah, but you know how it is. They all laugh like she's some genius. Like screwing people over is a personality trait. I thanked him and hung up. Then I found the photographer. His name was Nolan Crane. Young guy, small business, amazing work, and very, very aware of his value. I emailed him through Lauren Fields. "I'm reaching out on behalf of a client interested in full-day wedding coverage on June 15th. I've seen your work on Instagram and am very impressed. Are you booked, or is there a chance you'll have availability?" He replied the next day, "I'm technically booked that weekend, but haven't received final confirmation or deposit from that couple yet. If that changes, I'll let you know." There it was, a thread, and all I had to do was wait for Alyssa to pull it herself. But the final piece, the one that would shift the entire board, came not from planning or scheming, but from Lily. We were at the grocery store one evening. She was holding the list, checking off items with a pink gel pen, when she asked, "Will Grandma and Grandpa ever come visit us again?" I hesitated. "Why do you ask?" She shrugged. "They always used to. Before the wedding stuff. I just wondered if they forgot." I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her they were busy, that they'd call soon, that adults were complicated. But she deserved better than lies. So I said, "I think they made some choices that hurt people, and now they don't know how to fix it." She nodded thoughtfully, then grabbed a box of cereal and tossed it in the cart. Then I feel bad for them, 'cause we're really fun. That moment, That's when I knew this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making space for something better. But before I could fully let go, I had one last move to make, and it was time to set the board. I called the venue. Not from Lauren's email, not from a fake number, from my own phone. I asked for Elaine. "Hi," I said calmly. "I believe there's an event scheduled under the name Donnelly Gray in June. I have reason to believe the financial situation is unstable, and I thought it might be worth checking in with your client before finalizing plans." She was polite, confused, asked who I was. "I'm someone with first-hand experience being used by that family," I said. "And I have emails, screenshots, and public posts that might interest your fraud department, particularly if you're worried about payment issues. I'm not asking you to cancel anything. Just double-check your paperwork." A long pause, then a quiet, "Thank you for your call." I hung up. That was it. No fireworks. No grand reveal. Just a nudge. A whisper. A carefully aimed breeze against a fragile house of cards. And now? Now I wait. Not with anger. With intention. Because storms don't announce themselves. They just roll in. And when they hit, they change everything. It happened 3 weeks before the wedding. I was sipping my morning coffee while Lily decorated her lunchbox with glow-in-the-dark stickers when my phone buzzed with a notification. I wasn't expecting anything unusual, maybe a Slack ping or one of those limited-time deal emails that pile up like wet leaves. But when I saw the subject line, I nearly spilled my coffee on the kitchen counter. Rockvale Gardens, wedding event update, Donnelly Gray. I tapped the screen, heart still steady, but curious. Inside was a short, professional message. "Dear Jordan, you are receiving this message because you are listed as an emergency contact on file for the Donnelly Gray wedding scheduled for June 15th at Rockvale Gardens. We regret to inform you that due to non-payment and multiple missed deadlines, the event has been officially canceled. Please direct any questions to our accounts team." There was no fanfare, no dramatic preamble, just a blunt, final statement. Event canceled. I smiled, not out of spite, but out of something deeper. Relief. Closure. The kind you get not from burning bridges, but from watching someone finally run out of rope. I didn't rush to tell anyone. Didn't post anything. Didn't even text Matt. I just tucked the phone back in my pocket and said to Lily, "Hey, want to get ice cream after school?" "Before dinner?" "Before dinner." She beamed. "We didn't talk about the wedding." "Not yet." I figured the news would travel on its own. And it did. By lunchtime, my cousin Matt sent me a blurry screenshot of Alyssa's Instagram story. It was just a black background with the words, "Some people live to sabotage others. I hope you're proud. We'll see who's laughing soon." That was followed by a flurry of stories over the next 24 hours. A video of her crying in the passenger seat of her car. A blurry photo of a receipt with $74,983 scratched out. A quote post about fake family. She didn't mention me directly. She didn't have to. A few hours later, the group chat I'd long since muted lit up like a Christmas tree. My mother. "Jordan, what did you do?" My father, moments later. "You're being cruel. This is your sister's wedding, not a prank." Alyssa finally chimed in. "I hope Lily grows up and does this to you. Then maybe you'll understand what it's like to be abandoned by family." I stared at that one for a long time. Then I typed back, for the first time in months. "Lily will grow up knowing what boundaries look like. She'll know what self-respect feels like. And she'll never once have to wonder if she's second place to someone else's ego." I didn't cancel your wedding. You did. The moment you made it about everyone but yourself. Good luck, Alyssa. Then I left the group. For good. A few days passed in quiet fallout. I didn't respond to the voicemails. I didn't open the texts. And then, like a dying storm, the noise faded. But what came next? That was unexpected. It was a Sunday. Lily was building a Lego spaceship in the living room when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my dad standing on the porch, hands in his coat pockets, looking older than I remembered. His face was tight, unsure. "I thought you weren't speaking to me," I said. "I wasn't," he replied. "I guess I was wrong." He looked tired, like whatever illusion he'd been clinging to had finally cracked. He glanced past me into the living room where Lily sat humming to herself, oblivious. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I raised an eyebrow. "For what exactly?" He shifted. "For all of it. For letting her treat you like that. For standing by while your daughter was cut out. For making you feel like you had to clean up after everyone else's mess. I guess we were so used to Alyssa being the one who needed help. We forgot how strong you had to be to never ask for any." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough to erase decades of favoritism. But it was something. I'm not doing this for forgiveness, I said. I'm doing it so she learns a lesson. Finally, he nodded. I think she might. Then he handed me something. A card. On the front, Happy Father's Day. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. You're a good dad. I should have told you that years ago. Mom. I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. But I felt something loosen in my chest. He left without asking to come inside. He knew better. Later that night, I sat with Lily as she painted planets on construction paper. Her fingers were stained with purple and silver glitter, and she looked up suddenly and asked, "Is the wedding still happening?" I shook my head. "No, baby. It's not." She frowned. "That's sad." "Maybe. But sometimes sad things make room for better things." She thought about that for a second, then nodded. Like when I broke my doll, but then we made a spaceship out of her legs. I laughed. Exactly like that. Summer rolled in quietly after that. I got word from Matt that Alyssa tried to reschedule the wedding at a cheaper venue, but the vendors had already rebooked, and the money was long gone. The new date was TBD, which I took to mean never. Blake, it turned out, wasn't thrilled about sinking tens of thousands into a vaporized event and started pulling away. Fast. By July, Alyssa was single. By August, she was living with my parents again. And by September, she'd unfollowed me completely. There was no apology, no olive branch, no sudden epiphany, just distance. And for once, I was okay with that. Because here's the truth. Revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about reminding them you're not someone to be destroyed. It's the quiet reclaiming of dignity. The kind that doesn't need witnesses or applause. Just the simple, unshakable knowledge that you didn't let them win. And I didn't. Not this time. Lily and I spent the rest of the year building the life we deserved. One free of apology, one full of choice. On her birthday, she asked if we could go back to the cabin in the mountains. Of course, I said. Even if it's just us. I smiled. Especially if it's just us. We drove up that weekend. Made s'mores. Stargazed. Laughed. And somewhere, as the fire crackled and the wind rustled through the trees, I realized I didn't think about Alyssa anymore. Not with anger. Not even with pity. Just nothing. And in that nothing, I found everything I'd been looking for. Peace. Power. And finally, closure.